My name is Jean, and I am 56 years old. For the past 3 decades, my life has been measured in school runs, mortgage payments, and the quiet, persistent hope that my daughter would find her footing in this world. That Tuesday morning, I was pulling a warm apple pie from my oven, the scent of cinnamon and sugar filling my small kitchen. It was my mother's recipe. Katrina had called, her voice bubbling with an excitement I hadn't heard in years, saying she had huge news. My heart, that old faithful muscle, swelled with a mother's simple joy. I wrapped the pie, placed it carefully in a basket, and drove toward her new downtown apartment, unaware that the news waiting for me would shatter every expectation I had ever gently held. Before I share what happened in that penthouse that changed the course of our lives, I would be so grateful to know where you are listening from today. If you are someone who understands complicated family love, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means more than you know. Now let me take you back to that Tuesday morning. My life for the longest time had been a solo act of careful balance. After my husband David passed when Katrina was just 7, it was just the two of us. I worked as a bank teller, then a bookkeeper, my world a spreadsheet of necessities. All the color, all the music came from Kat. She was a bright, chatty little girl who clung to my hand. I remember saving for months to buy her a proper art set for her 10th birthday, watching her eyes light up. That light started to change as she grew. Ambition replaced curiosity. Her degree in marketing landed her in a fast-paced agency, and our conversations shortened into text messages about her latest promotion or a chic new restaurant. I told myself this was success. This was what I had worked for. The distance I felt was just a mother's nostalgia. Her new building was a glass and steel monument to that success. The lobby was all marble and silent elegance. A uniformed concierge gave me a polite, assessing look before calling up. The elevator shot skyward, a smooth, silent ascent that made my ears pop. When the doors opened, it was directly into her foyer. The penthouse was breathtaking, a vast open space with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline. The furniture was sleek, modern, and looked as if no one ever actually sat on it. The air smelled like new leather and expensive perfume. Katrina stood in the middle of the living room, glowing. She looked like a magazine version of my daughter in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Before I could even say hello, she thrust a piece of paper into my hands. "Mom, look, just look." It was a lottery ticket. And next to it, on her tablet screen, was the official winner's page, the numbers a perfect match. The amount took my breath away. $125 million. I think I made a sound, a gasp mixed with a sob. Tears sprung to my eyes instantly. I dropped my basket and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Oh, my baby, oh, Katrina, this is incredible. This is life-changing." For a beautiful, fleeting moment, it was like the old days. She hugged me back, laughing. I know I still can't believe it. I pulled back, holding her face in my hands, wiping at my own tears. "Have you called a lawyer?" "A financial advisor, sweetheart. This kind of money, it needs to be handled so carefully. There are so many things to think about. We need to plan." That's when I felt her stiffen. Her smile became fixed. She gently extracted herself from my grasp. "Mom, relax. I've got it under control. I've already been in touch with some top-tier people. They handle athletes, celebrities. They know what they're doing." She walked over to a minimalist bar and poured herself a glass of sparkling water, her back to me. The "we" in my sentence seemed to hang in the quiet, sterile air unnoticed by her. Trying to bridge the sudden chill, I bent down to my basket. My hand still slightly trembling from the shock, pulled out the pie, still warm in its dish, and then a small plain envelope. "I brought your favorite," I said, placing the pie on her vast, empty kitchen counter. "And this. It's not much, but I've been saving it for you." I held out the envelope. She turned and took it with a slightly bemused smile and slid out the check inside. It was for $8,000. Every dollar represented a choice I had made over the past few years. The vacation I didn't take, the new couch I didn't buy, a little nest egg I was building for her just in case she ever needed a down payment or wanted to start her own business. She stared at the check. Her expression shifted slowly like a cloud passing over the sun. The bemused smile faded into something flat and then into a look of pure, unvarnished dismissal. She let out a soft, almost pitying laugh and placed the check on the cold marble countertop as if it were a used napkin. "Mom," she said, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness that froze the blood in my veins. "This is sweet, really, but look around." She gestured broadly at the penthouse at the view. "I just won $125 million. I don't need your pennies anymore." The word pennies hit me like a physical slap. I took a small step back. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Those weren't pennies. They were my late nights, my modest sacrifices, my silent hopes, packaged into a fragile paper rectangle. "Katrina," I started my voice barely a whisper, then finding a thread of strength. It's not about the amount, it's a gift. It's from me. It's to show you I'm happy for you, that I support you. She sighed a long, suffering sound. Mom, that's the thing. I don't need that kind of support anymore. I need space. I'm starting a brand new life, a life without, well, without all the baggage, the constant worrying, the outdated advice. It's time for me to fly on my own. The words were a precise surgical knife, each one cut deeper than the last. Baggage, outdated. I felt myself shrinking, becoming the very burden she was describing. So, she continued, her tone becoming brisk, businesslike. I think it's best if you go now. I have a lot of calls to make. My team is waiting. She stood there waiting for me to leave. My own daughter. In that moment, I didn't see the successful young woman. I saw the little girl I read stories to, but her eyes were cold and unfamiliar. Something inside me, some final thread of hope, snapped. The pain was so acute it was almost peaceful. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply nodded a stiff mechanical movement. I walked over to the counter, picked up the check for $8,000 and slid it back into the envelope. I left the apple pie there, a forgotten peace offering on the altar of her new fortune. I turned and walked to the elevator, my back straight. I did not look back. The last thing I heard before the doors closed was the crisp tap of her heels on the floor as she walked away. The descent in the elevator was a silent, slow-motion freefall. The polished doors reflected a ghostly version of a woman in a simple sweater clutching her purse like a lifeline. When I reached my car, the familiar fabric of the driver's seat felt like the only real thing in the world. I sat for a long time, hands on the wheel, not seeing the parking garage around me. The dam broke then. Sobs racked my body, ugly and unrestrained. I cried for the little girl who was gone. I cried for the decades of single motherhood, the loneliness. I never let her see the dreams I quietly shelved for her. I cried because pennies was the most devastating word I had ever heard. But as the storm of grief began to subside, something else rose in its place. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, sharp clarity. My mind, trained over years to spot discrepancies in ledgers and assess risk, clicked into gear. $125 million. Katrina, 32 years old, impulsive. Currently navigating a messy, contentious divorce from Michael, a man who could charm the stripes off a zebra and had the moral compass of a weather vane. A wave of visceral fear washed over me momentarily, drowning the personal hurt. She was holding a winning ticket, but in the eyes of the world, she had just become prey. Michael would be on her like a hawk. So-called friends would emerge from the woodwork. Unscrupulous financial gurus would offer her get-richer-quick schemes. She had no concept of wealth preservation. In her mind, it was an infinite number for spending. History was littered with lottery winners who were bankrupt within 5 years. My daughter was about to become a statistic, and a heartbroken one at that. I started the car. I didn't drive home. I drove across town to a modest brick building with a brass plaque that read Hawthorne and Associates. Benjamin Hawthorne had been David's friend and our family lawyer for 40 years. He had handled David's will, the small life insurance, the creation of the family trust. His office was a comforting mess of books and legal pads. Ben, now in his 70s with a kind, wrinkled face, took one look at me and his smile faded. Jane, good heavens, what's wrong? I didn't collapse. I didn't tell a long, sorrowful tale. I sat in the chair opposite his desk, my voice surprisingly steady, and laid out the facts as if I were presenting a case. Ben, Katrina has won the lottery, $125 million. About half an hour ago, she informed me she no longer needs me or my pennies and asked me to leave. That is irrelevant now. What is relevant is that she is a 32-year-old woman in the middle of a divorce with no financial literacy, about to come into a sum of money that will make her a target for every predator in a 500-mile radius. As her mother, I cannot stand by and watch that happen, even if she hates me for it. Ben listened, steepling his fingers. The trust, he said quietly. Yes, the David P. Mitchell Family Trust. David had been cautiously optimistic, but also a realist. The trust he set up named me as sole trustee. Its primary purpose was to manage a small inheritance from his parents for Katrina's education and well-being, with the assets transferring to her in full when she turned 35 or upon my discretion, if she demonstrated mature financial responsibility before then. There was a clause one I'd always thought was David being overly cautious about the trust's purview, extending to any windfall or asset acquired by the beneficiary prior to the trust's dissolution, particularly if said acquisition stems from resources or allowances provided through the trust. Katrina's allowance. Her phone bill, her car insurance, her monthly fun money, I'd sent even after she got her job. The lottery ticket was bought with cash from that allowance. Legally. Ben said, thinking aloud, there is a very strong argument that the winning ticket is an asset acquired through trust resources. It gives us standing. We would need to file an immediate emergency motion to have the winnings directed into the trust for management and a temporary restraining order to prevent Michael or any other party from making a claim on it before probate. Can it be done quickly? I asked. He was already reaching for the phone. We'll have to move like lightning. Contact the Lottery Commission. Draft the filings. We need a courier to serve Katrina with notice before she does something irreversible like trying to claim the lump sum herself. I felt a terrifying calm settle over me. Send the courier, send them to her penthouse right now. My own home felt like a museum of a past life when I returned. The quiet was different now, not peaceful, but charged. I made a cup of tea, but my hands were steady. I waited. I knew what was happening across town. At that moment, in her pristine penthouse, Katrina was likely floating on a cloud of triumph. Perhaps she was scrolling through luxury real estate listings or dreaming of sports cars. The doorbell chimed. It wasn't a single delivery person. It was a small, solemn group. 2 professional couriers in uniforms from a renowned legal service and a young associate from Ben's firm clutching a thick binder. They were polite, immovable. Katrina Mitchell documents for you, ma'am. Requires your signature for receipt. Puzzled but still smug, she signed the electronic pad. The associate handed her the binder. On behalf of Hawthorne and Associates, representing the trustees of the David P. Mitchell Family Trust, you have been served. Have a good day. The door closed. Alone again, Katrina opened the binder. The first page was a cover letter, then a formal legal notice, then the emergency motion filed with the county court. Words leaped out at her: petition for emergency guardianship of windfall asset, trustee Jean Mitchell, temporary restraining order, Michael Delaney, preservation of assets. The color drained from her face, her hands began to shake. The smug, victorious smile twisted into a mask of utter confusion, then dawning horror, and finally, pure, unadulterated panic. She fumbled for her phone. My phone rang, piercing the quiet of my kitchen. I saw her name on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Mom, what did you do? Her voice was a shriek frayed with hysteria. You can't do this. This is my money, mine. This is theft. I'll call the police. I waited for the wave of her anger to crash. When there was a half second of silence, I spoke. My voice was calm, level, devoid of any triumph. This is not theft, Katrina. This is the David P. Mitchell Family Trust established by your father to protect you. The ticket was purchased with funds from that trust. Therefore, the winnings are subject to the trust's management until you are 35 or until the trustee, which is me, deem you financially responsible. You're stealing from me. You're jealous. You're a bitter old woman who wants to control me. The words were meant to wound. They didn't. Not anymore. This has nothing to do with jealousy, Katrina. It has everything to do with preventing you from losing every single one of those $125 million to people who see you as a lottery ticket and not a person. Your father foresaw a moment like this. My job is to execute his wishes to protect you. Even from yourself, the trust is irrevocable. My decision as the trustee is final. I heard a strangled gasp on the other end of the line, then a click. She had hung up. I placed my phone on the table. There was no victory in this, only a profound, weary wait. The following weeks were a blur of legal paperwork and emotional trench warfare. Katrina hired a high-priced, aggressive lawyer named Alan Pierce. Meetings were arranged. I sat across from my own daughter and her attorney in Ben's conference room. Pierce tried to paint me as a gold-digging mother exploiting a technicality to get her hands on her daughter's fortune. Mrs. Mitchell, isn't it true you are estranged from your daughter and saw this windfall as your own payday? Ben objected. I raised my hand. I'd like to answer. I opened my own folder. Not legal documents, but financial projections I had stayed up compiling. Charts, graphs, case studies of other lottery winners. Mr. Pierce, this is a projection of monthly spending if Katrina follows the lifestyle she's already indicating. This is the statistical likelihood of a lawsuit from a disgruntled friend or business partner within the first year. Here is the average return on high-risk investments commonly pitched to sudden millionaires. Here is the precedent for spousal claims and divorce proceedings, even post-separation when a windfall occurs. Michael Delaney has already, according to this email my daughter forwarded me in distress, demanded a fair settlement for his emotional support during their marriage. I slid the printout across the table. Katrina flinched. She hadn't told me about that email. I had seen the notification on her screen when she showed Pierce something else. I am not a gold digger. I said, my eyes on Katrina, not her lawyer. I am a fiduciary. My duty under the law and under my husband's wishes is to preserve this capital. My personal feelings are not relevant to that duty. In a separate proceeding, Ben successfully obtained the temporary order, freezing Michael's ability to make a claim. The Lottery Commission, after reviewing the trust documents, agreed to hold the prize in escrow pending the court's decision on the trust's jurisdiction. Katrina's rage slowly burned down into a smolder of frustration and then into a confused resentment. The reality of her situation was dawning. The friends did start calling with vague business proposals. The divorce negotiations with Michael turned nastier. She was living in a gilded cage of her own making with no control over the gold. After a particularly grueling hearing, she approached me in the courthouse hallway. Her expensive clothes looked incongruous against her tired face. "Did you really do all of this?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Just to control me, to punish me for what I said?" I looked at my daughter, truly looked at her. The woman, not the memory. "No, Katrina, I did it because love sometimes has to wear a very ugly practical coat to do its job. Your father knew you might need that coat one day. My job was to make sure you put it on when the storm hit, whether you wanted to or not. Control is about power. Protection is about love. This was always about protection." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. The legal battle eventually settled not with a dramatic courtroom verdict, but with a negotiated stipulation. The winnings were formally placed into the trust. A structured plan was put in place. Katrina would receive a generous monthly allowance, more than enough for a luxurious life. A significant portion was placed in conservative, diversified investments, overseen by a board that included me, Ben, and an independent financial manager we all agreed upon. Another portion was earmarked for Katrina to complete a certified course in financial management and investment principles. Our relationship did not snap back to what it was. How could it? The trust was a permanent, tangible wall between us. But the nature of the wall changed. It was no longer a wall of screaming silence. It became a boundary acknowledged by us both. We began having monthly lunches. The conversations were polite, sometimes stilted. We talked about the weather, a new exhibit at the museum, the book I was reading. We did not talk about the trust. We did not talk about the past. It was a new, fragile, and strangely respectful dance. I used the modest trustee fee to make changes in my own life. I had my kitchen remodeled finally. I enrolled in a pottery class at the community center, my hands learning a new, messy kind of creation. I took a trip to the coast with two old friends from my bank days, and we laughed like schoolgirls. Katrina, under the structure she had fought so hard against, began to change. Stripped of the ability to make impulsive million-dollar mistakes, she focused on what she could control. She used a portion of her allowance with trust approval to start a small digital marketing consultancy. For the first time, she was building something that relied on her skill, not luck. She had to submit business plans, budgets. I saw a flicker of the focused, determined girl she'd been in college before the gloss of easy success clouded her vision. A year has passed now. This morning, I sat in my small, sunny backyard with a cup of tea. The autumn leaves were just beginning to turn. The mail brought a simple card, no occasion noted. The front was a painting of a single sturdy oak tree. Inside, in Katrina's precise handwriting, it read, "Thank you for the coat. It fits now, ties." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. It was an acknowledgement, a recognition from across the great divide we had created. That was enough. More than enough. I held the card to my chest and felt a quiet, settled peace. The lottery did not bring my daughter happiness. It simply held a mirror up to who we both were beneath the layers of hope and history. I learned that the deepest love is not always soft. Sometimes it is the hardest, most unyielding thing you will ever have to offer. It is the love that says no to protect, that stands in the way of a cliff, even when the person you're protecting is furious at you for blocking the view. True freedom, I discovered, is not in being loved or being liked. It is in the integrity of knowing you did the right thing, the hard thing, guided by duty and a love bigger than your own need for affection. I still have that photo of Katrina as a gap-toothed 7-year-old on my mantle. I will always miss that little girl. But my purpose was to love the woman she became enough to sometimes stand firmly in her path so she wouldn't lose herself entirely. If you have ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love, even when they couldn't see the danger, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. How do you balance letting go with holding on? Your experiences and insights are what make this community so valuable. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like. It helps others find these important conversations. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and sharing your own thoughts. Thank you for listening to my story today. May you find the strength to wear the coat when you need to, and the wisdom to accept one when it's offered. Take care.